You're visiting the Mom Next Door and our stories of faith. I'm glad you dropped by for a visit. Please stay a while and hear what the Lord has done in the lives of moms just like you and me. Well, today I have a special friend with me visiting, and one thing that's kind of cool is that my friend Jen was one of the first people I told about this podcast when it was just, the Lord was laying it on my heart, and I was really thinking through the possibility of doing a podcast and what it would look like and how it would come about. I was on the phone talking to Jen, and I just laid it out in that
I'm totally honored.
Yeah, it was really cool. You called at the right time, because it was something where I was just like, I don't know. Does the Lord want me to do this? Is this something where is it possible to bring women on and share their stories of faith? Is it something anybody would be even interested in doing? And when I threw that out there, you were like, I'm on board.
Absolutely.
Sign me up. I'll do it. And the thing that I loved is that you, though it's sometimes hard and it's uncomfortable, your stance was, my story's hard. It's tough.
Yeah.
But God brought me through it, and I want to give him glory for the things that he did in my life, because the glory really is due him. And so anyway, so that is one of the reasons I'm so excited that you're here now. It took us a few weeks to get scheduled to make it happen. But how I met you, I always want to start out with how I met you. And so I remember we were at some homeschool event, and I don't actually remember exactly what it was, but we just started talking, and it was at the very beginning of your homeschooling journey.
Yeah.
You were just starting to figure it out.
Pretty overwhelmed, yes.
Yeah. And that's been years now, and you've sorted it out, and you've been going well. And then since we've ended up at a few events at the same time. Some of our children are the same ages, so they've been able to do stuff together.
Yeah.
So that's great. So why don't you take a second and introduce yourself and your family to me?
Okay. I'm Jen. I just am deeply in love with Jesus, and he is my all in all. I have a great family. My husband and I have been married 26 years, married in college, so pretty young, and then we have 6 kids, ages 20 to 6, and I'm currently homeschooling the younger 3. The older ones have had a short bit of homeschooling in there, but also a lot of public school. And we are currently very interested in moving to the country. Been working to sell our house and get out to have a small farm. We have a rabbitry, and gonna raise the kids in a community that learns how to really care about each other and live life together.
We're gonna talk about today a really sensitive issue. It's a hard issue, and it may take us a while to work through that today. But the quick sentence of it is, you and your husband survived and miraculously are living very well past an affair.
Yes.
And because of that, the Lord has really taught you a lot. He's grown you a lot. And let's just jump in.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's just start.
No unmessy way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. How do we unpeel this? How do we take this back? But so I guess we'll start is, how did you find out? Like, were you suspecting something, or were you totally blindsided?
No, I really wasn't suspecting anything. I mean, we had an okay marriage back then. Now, let me give you a little context. This is when we were expecting my 4th, and she's a teenager now, so that might give you some reference for when this happened. But there was, ebbs and flows of our marriage, but just, we were steady, believers, regularly going to church, had a strong commitment to family, a pretty okay marriage. And, now that I have this amazing marriage, it's okay. But to me back then it was really good, and it was normal. I guess, I was characterized with quite a lot of chronic anxiety in that time of my life. I had a lot, 3 young kids, was expecting my 4th. And, but, in terms of the marriage being strong, I didn't have doubts. Never thought infidelity would be something we had to work through. So, there was a piece of emotional distance between us, and that, that ebbed and flowed. I was getting a lot better after our 3rd, that we were getting closer. And then there was this space where he like kind of withdrew again. And I thought maybe that was due to stress at work. There was some medical issues going on. There were things that could account for it, but it did feel a little weird to me. Looking back, I see, that had to do with the affair. It did. And my gut kind of told me something was up, but I didn't necessarily expect.
It's really hard to navigate when you have so many pressures in life. Like, all your kids are little, hormonally, the babies, and you're pregnant. And so it's emotionally, you're like, I'm sure okay, I'm pregnant. Am I being over emotional? Am I, financially, you're young, you've got financial strains. And so it's really a hard time in life to really put your finger on it too, I think,
right,
for everybody, even not going through that situation. That's just a hard time in life as a young married couple, expecting.
I had the day of a real amazing time with God, and I knew there was some stresses on my husband, and a particular meeting he had to go through that was difficult, and I just was interceding for him, and I felt like, okay, God is answering my prayers. God gave me a settled peace, but what I realized later, that peace was really for me, because it was coming. He came home and he sat me down, and I thought, oh no, who died? I mean, it was really solemn. And he said, there's something you don't know. And he told me he had an affair. And for the sake of some people's privacies, I won't go into all details, but basically it had been a sexual experience followed by what seemed to me like a dating experience of about 4 months. And I am kind of really concrete, and so I was like just kind of floored, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, are you telling me you put, for the sake of edit, certain body part into certain body part? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, whoa. And I just had adrenaline coursing through my body, and I had to move. I grabbed the dog and the leash, and I went out, just ran out basically for a walk, and just my mind was swirling. I felt really trapped. I maybe could attune it to a panic attack.
Yeah.
And I don't know when I came back, but it was a while that I just had to move, get my energy out. I did pray, but I didn't hear anything from God, but it was, I knew he was there. But I eventually made it back to the house, and my husband said, with tears in his eyes, don't leave me. And I said, I'm here, aren't I?
Yeah. The logistics of that whole conversation, I can't imagine it, but you're right. It was a somber moment. He sat down with you and said, hey, I've got something I want to tell you. I imagine the kids were asleep, and from what you describe, it's a fight or flight. Like, what do I need? I just need to get out and clear my head and think through. But I can imagine okay, so even this morning, I take my kids to summer camp, drop them off, and I get home and I realize I forgot their lunches at home in the fridge. So I'm in a panic mode over forgetting to take their lunches, forgetting to send them. So I get home and I get their lunches and put the little blue ice in, and I go drive back to camp to drop off. And even that, like, kind of threw me for the morning, right? And I was like, oh, this was not my plan. This wasn't what I was thinking about. And even that set me off. So I can't imagine having to process and think through it. That is really hard.
It kind of threw us into shock. Oops, sorry. I don't know about him, actually, because he had come to the place where he was ready to confess. But for me, it was shock. And and then it was a couple days later, and he looked me in the eyes and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know, but we're not going to do this alone.
Right.
At that point, then we had conversation about who we thought we could talk to, and we decided on the pastors who had married us. The pastor and his wife were close to us in another city, and we made arrangements to go there with our 3 little kids in tow.
Yeah.
And we were traveling to my parents for the holidays, so we just went out of our way to go there and land for a few days. And he was truly repentant, and just, I was able to see his breaking heart pour out in that moment. But I wasn't prepared for the longness of the healing that was ahead, but it was the first step,
Well, he was truly repentant, and he wanted to make changes and fix things, but it's not an erasable event.
No.
So as much as you'd like to just say, okay, well, I'm not going to worry about it, you're repentant, there is a lot to work through, and there's a huge process. And so from the time you found out and those couple days later, you hadn't told anybody, right? It was just kind of, you were thinking it through.
There was okay, so the day he told me was my first prenatal and appointment for this 4th child we were expecting. And so I went to that appointment, and it just sort of floored me, because here I'd never had to think about whether my STD test would come back.
Oh, yeah.
Affected, and so I was just, just reeling. I didn't know. I had so many emotions, I didn't know how to handle them. And I prayed on the way home, God, what can I do? Who can I go to? And he gave me the name of a friend. I wasn't particularly close to her at that time. We became really close after, but I went to her door and I knocked on her door, and she let me in, and I could not talk. I just wept, and she just held me and she prayed over me. And I didn't even tell her that day what was going on. She just said she'd be praying for me.
What an amazing woman.
Yeah.
So you just knocked on her door out of the blue, and she
held me on her
you.
couch in her living room.
Was she older?
Yeah.
Was she, or she about your age?
No, she's actually a few years younger than me.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I would love to be that kind of woman, where somebody could show up at my door and no words needed, but just to support them.
It was really beautiful. It was a Christ moment. And but you're right. No, I felt a lot of shame internally. I was a good Christian girl. I did things right, and how could this happen? How could this happen in my family,
You didn't have to walk alone, because you ended up building a community.
I did. I looked, well, really it was God that directed me to certain people, that were people that could keep my confidence, but also, and not judge, but also just, really be there in the mess of it.
Right.
So, this particular friend was one of them. I did see a counselor before we moved. I needed to, some of what happened then was external circumstances on all, some medical things, some just, loss of job, loss of, but some of them were really directly related losses because of the affair. And we ended up having to list our house on the market and move.
I remember the song that here I raise my Ebenezer. That word Ebenezer, you know, that it means it's like a remembering stone.
Yeah.
And I think how often as moms we hinge like, oh, that happened during this pregnancy, and that happened during this when this one was a baby, and so we actually, I think as moms, our timeline is hinged on our children's birth or pregnancy or whenever, things like that. So I think that child became your Ebenezer, you know, like that was a defining moment in your life. Yeah. And in a time when the Lord really came in and showed you who he was at a totally different level, in a totally different way than you'd ever seen him before.
Right.
And you were telling me earlier about, and I'm not sure if it's the same friend or not, but somebody took you to a retreat.
Okay, yeah. Well, I was telling you about how after I had my fourth baby, you know, I struggle with some postpartum depression anyways with my babies, but this was different. This was deeper. And I actually had some thoughts of hurting myself at that time. I think God knew I needed that baby, to be nursing that baby at that time. But there was an extended family member who had reached out to me, and she saw past some of this superficial surface stuff that was going on, and she said, "How are you really?" And I just wept, and I was like, I'm falling apart. I want to die, you know. And she just said, come be with me. Come fly out. I'll give you a retreat. You know, we'll feed you. We'll let you rest. You can read. Bring the baby if you need to, and we'll just take care of you. And my husband and I were financially destitute at that point, really. I mean, I was like, I can't afford to. I can't, you know, it's just like, you can't afford not to. And I was like, well, I don't do anything without.
You want to check it. You want to check past and make sure it's going to work.
I didn't think that he would let me do that at that point, you know. And I said, no, I don't think I can. And she said, well, then I'm going to pray you out of there. And 2 weeks later, I had a flight. I took my 4-month-old, and away we went to, I didn't know what. I just knew she understood me at a deeper level. And then she got me in touch while I was there at the retreat with someone who had a really similar story to mine. And so I got kind of a sense of like, wow, this recovery is not just going to happen. It takes intentional work. But there are resources. There is hope. There's places that I can connect with that are going to give me what I need to make healthy choices for my family, even if they're not the choices I want to make for my family. Like at that point, you know, I was even just wrestling with, am I going to need to separate because of some bad thinking things that were happening, some patterns that were, him hiding and not seeking accountability type of thing. So, anyways, it was emboldening. It was frightening, but it was also peaceful because I could start to really hear God again for myself and realize that I had kind of set my marriage up as my idol. You know, this is I'm doing the right thing, you know, by trying to keep my marriage together. And God met me, particularly during that retreat. I got to borrow a car from my extended family member and drive up to the other state where my friend, who was the original friend that just held me on the couch, she was also pregnant at the same time, and we had our babies in different states because we had both moved. And so I got to go see her and visit her and just not have to explain myself. Mm-hmm. She just understood. She got me at that deep level. It was so refreshing. And on my way home from that, I was driving the car back to my extended family member to finish her retreat and then come on home. But I had been praying for several months. A scripture God had given me that in Revelations 3, it talks about God's new name. And I'm like, what is your name? I need to know your name. And I started driving this gorgeous fall colors, you know, roads that were just perfect, and the baby sleeping in the back seat of the car. He said, my name is enough, capital E. My name is enough. I'm enough for you. If your marriage doesn't make it, I'm enough for you.
The thing that I love and take note on is the reaction of your friends. I love that they were bold enough to embrace you and bold enough to be part of your story. Because I think sometimes other people's stories look messy. Our own stories look messy.
Yep.
And we think that we have to stay in our lane. You know, let her deal with it because it's her story. I don't want to get involved. I will take care of my own issues. I don't want to need anybody. I don't want somebody else to be involved. And so I think this is an amazing example of walking with the Lord. You were walking with the Lord at the time. You were talking to him. You were growing in your faith. But not only that, but all these women that you encountered were also walking with the Lord and were listening to him. And when he put it on their heart to reach out and to connect with you, that's kind of was the jumping off point of some of the healing is them being obedient to listen to the Lord and you growing in the Lord.
It was really Jesus with skin on. Yes. I mean, like, for example, when we moved then to this brand new town where we lived with my parents for a while before we got off, in a new financial path. Well, there was a neighbor that was a believer to my parents. I didn't know her growing up or anything. But she turned out to be one of the safe people that I could tell my story to, and just loved me at this deep level. And she ended up being like a babysitter for me to go to counseling. One of my, again, support people. So
yeah. So I want to jump in because you took some notes and I tried to take some notes, but I know specifically you were telling me that there were some real specific stages in your healing journey. Like, what was stage one like?
Stage one was sort of just dealing with the grief. It was a lot focused on self-care. My husband and I had pretty difficult communication patterns that started to change for real after I came back from that retreat and I had some resources. And I basically said, you need to get counseling or we need to separate. And that was a tough love choice that really helped him start taking responsibility for his healing. And at first, we were so wounded together, we couldn't really work together. We didn't end up having to separate, but we did do like our vulnerable work with our separate counselors, with our separate groups. We got involved. I did first with a recovery group at my church, and he got involved in a different group that had some, recognitive reconditioning type of therapy. It was a men's group. So it was important that we both did our part, but we weren't quite yet ready to work together. It was too volatile. And I'm not talking about forgiveness. Forgiveness piece did happen. And it happened over and over and over. That again, there was more and more losses to process. So then, more forgiveness.
But the logistics part of it, you didn't just jump right in. And part
we did
of
try to do some couples counseling, and that really backfired at first.
Well, part of working through a situation like this is knowing that it's not going to heal overnight. It's going to be a process.
No, the affair was really a symptom of some deeper level things that we had to process through.
Right. And so having to work on it individually, actually, it kind of makes sense. That, there was work to be done as foundation to then be able to work together in your processing.
Right. And I was so angry, just very, very angry. And I remember praying one time, just, God, I am so done. If you don't show up, I'm done with you. And God took me up on that challenge.
And he showed up.
Again and again.
Yeah.
And again.
And he kept showing up.
Yes.
And he kept showing up.
In just, very personal ways that, I'll share just a couple examples. One was, we went to in the first disclosure of the affair, shortly after were the holidays, and my little daughter had said a prayer for snow the next day, and it was snow. Christmas in Oregon, I mean,
yeah.
That's unusual. And it was like God answering that was so personal to me. And
He's like, I'm watching.
Yeah.
I hear you.
It was months later. It was May. And I was having one of the roughest days that I'd had. And it started to snow, just briefly. But it was like God saying, I mean, snow in May, that's weird anywhere. I mean, well, maybe not anywhere, but
here it is. Here it is. That's not normal. Yeah.
And it was God saying, I see you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here.
Right.
So, and there was another example, just a night that I could not sleep and was reading a scripture came to me, very directed about God collecting my tears in a bottle. And that's how much He loves me, and He saw my pain. Some of the ways I connected with God in this time were like reading the Psalms, which are full of emotions, and I'm like, okay, if God could handle David saying, smash babies' heads against the rocks, He can handle what the anger that I'm going through. And so through the Psalms, I got a lot of support, and in worship at church, there was a song being played. It was the hymn, How Deep the Father's Love. And the Father's love is so deep. And there's a line in there that says, He turned His face away. And at first I'm like, how could a father's love be so deep? He turned His face away. And yet in that moment, I realized Jesus knew what it was like to be intimately betrayed. Jesus knew what it was like to have the Father abandon Him. He cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? And that was how he felt. And God pouring out His wrath on our sin on Jesus.
That's a totally different level of understanding what Jesus did for us.
Oh, man. He understood the pain of betrayal in that sense of losing His most intimate connection, and yet He did that because of His great love for us. And the Father arranged that because of His great love for us. So then, yeah, it was a revelation.
Well, I think sometimes the deeper a subject, the longer it takes to get through. And we have just started the story here. And in order to work through it, I think we're going to take a break, and we're going to continue on next week to hear about this miracle of healing. I hope that you've been encouraged or challenged in your faith today, and that something we discussed prompts you to grow deeper in your walk with the Lord. If it has, make sure you tell a friend so they can grow along with you. And if you or a friend would like to be a guest and share about God's faithfulness in your life, please email me at podcast@tendingfields.net. Because when we tell of God's faithfulness, we never run out of stories.
Whatever is true, whatever is noble, the